On the evening of May 6th, 1937, the largest flying object ever built arrived over New Jersey. It was a German airship, longer than 3 Boeing 747s laid end to end, and it was about to dock after a routine crossing of the Atlantic. 34 seconds. That is all it took. In barely half a minute, the mighty Hindenburg was transformed into a falling skeleton of fire. 36 people died, and the whole thing was captured on film and broadcast to a horrified world. This is exactly why it burned. To understand the Hindenburg, you first have to understand the world it came from. In the 1930s, the airship was the future of luxury travel. While airplanes were cramped, loud, and short-ranged, the great rigid airships floated across entire oceans in near silence. And the Hindenburg was the queen of them all. Built by the German Zeppelin Company, it was over 800 feet long. Inside, passengers enjoyed a dining room, a lounge with a specially built lightweight aluminum piano, private sleeping cabins, and even a pressurized smoking room. It crossed from Germany to America in about 2.5 days, in a comfort that airplanes would not match for decades to come. But the Hindenburg carried a fatal flaw, and it was baked into its very design. To float, an airship needs a lifting gas that is lighter than air. And there are really only 2 choices. Helium, which is completely inert and will not burn, or hydrogen, which gives more lift and is far cheaper, but is violently flammable. The Hindenburg was actually designed to use safe, non-flammable helium. There was just one problem. In the 1930s, the United States held a near-total monopoly on the world's helium supply, and American law banned its export. With Nazi Germany rising, the United States would not sell. So the Zeppelin Company was forced back onto the only gas it could get: 7 million cubic feet of highly flammable hydrogen. They had built a magnificent flying palace and filled it with one of the most explosive gases known to man. And for a while, it seemed to work perfectly. The engineers were not reckless. They knew exactly what they were sitting on top of. Hydrogen was handled with extraordinary care. The crew wore special anti-static clothing and shoes with hemp soles to avoid a stray spark. Matches and lighters were confiscated from every passenger as they boarded. The one smoking room on board was sealed behind a double airlock door and kept at a slight overpressure so that no hydrogen could ever seep into it. And it worked. In 1936 alone, the Hindenburg completed 17 successful crossings of the Atlantic. The dangers were understood, and they were being managed. To the watching public, the airship looked completely and reassuringly safe. It had never once had a serious accident. That reputation was about to end in 34 seconds. On the evening of May 6th, 1937, the Hindenburg finally approached its American destination, the Naval Air Station at Lakehurst, New Jersey. It was already hours behind schedule, first delayed by strong headwinds over the ocean, and then by thunderstorms sitting directly over the landing field. The captain circled for hours, waiting for the weather to clear enough to land. The air was still damp and heavily charged with electricity from the storms that had just passed through. Finally, just after 7 in the evening, the great ship turned and moved into dock. High above the field, it dropped its long mooring lines down toward the ground crew waiting below, and those wet ropes touched the earth. Here is the chain of events that most investigators believe destroyed the ship. As the airship had flown for hours through that charged, stormy air, its outer fabric skin had built up a different electrical charge from the metal framework hidden inside it. The ship had become, in effect, an enormous floating capacitor. When the wet mooring lines touched the ground, they grounded the metal frame, but they did not ground the outer skin. And that created a sudden, sharp difference in electrical potential across the surface of the ship. Somewhere near the tail, that difference finally discharged. A single spark, and at that very same moment, the evidence suggests hydrogen was already leaking from a gas cell in the tail, possibly from a bracing wire that had snapped and tore it open. A spark and a cloud of leaking hydrogen in the same place at the same instant. That was all it took. At about 25 minutes past 7, a flame appeared near the top of the tail. In less than 1 second, it bloomed into an enormous ball of fire as the hydrogen caught and ignited. The flames raced forward through the body of the ship, devouring one giant cell of gas after another. The tail dropped as its lift instantly vanished, and the burning giant began to sink, tail first, toward the ground, down on a landing field. A radio reporter named Herbert Morrison had been calmly recording what was supposed to be a routine landing. His anguished, breaking cry, "Oh, the humanity," would go on to become one of the most famous pieces of audio ever recorded. From that first small flame to the entire ship lying in blazing ruins on the ground took around 34 seconds. And yet, astonishingly, most of the people on board actually survived. Of the 97 people aboard the Hindenburg that evening, 62 of them lived. Many survived simply by riding the ship down as it fell the last few feet, then leaping out of the windows and sprinting away from the wreckage as the flames spread across the field. Because hydrogen is lighter than air, the fire burned upward and away from the passenger decks slung below. In the end, 35 people on the ship were killed, 13 passengers and 22 crew, along with one man on the ground crew below. It was a horrifying loss of life. But given that the largest aircraft ever built had just burned completely out of the sky in a little over 30 seconds, it could very easily have been far, far worse. The Hindenburg disaster did not just destroy a single airship. It destroyed an entire industry, essentially overnight. And it was not because the fire was the deadliest air disaster of its day. It was because it had happened directly in front of the newsreel cameras and the photographers and the live radio microphones. The public had watched the shining future of luxury travel burn out of the sky in real time, and they simply lost their nerve for the airship completely. Within just a few years, the great passenger Zeppelins were gone forever, replaced by the airplane. And the deepest irony is this: the Hindenburg was not brought down by bad engineering. It was brought down by a political embargo that had denied it the safe gas it was actually designed to carry. It was a magnificent machine, filled with the wrong gas and undone by a single spark. And every airship dream since that night has flown in its shadow.